Our next conversation, as we're heading towards the 2024 elections in just about 10 days, we look at the manifestos of the political parties. And this conversation particularly is focusing on what the political parties have promised when it comes to the energy sector. The energy sector is key, it's critical, it's important. Our lights need to be on and it needs to be stable if we're going to industrialize and if our economy is going to keep on running. And so, what are the parties saying they will do to make sure that the energy sector is safe and secure and proper, so to speak, going into the 2024 elections? And to help us get into that conversation, Dr. Charles Ofori is here in the studio. He is policy lead for climate change and energy transition at ACEP, that's the Africa Center for Energy Policy. Doc, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us here in the studio. I'm pretty sure you've looked at what the MPP will do in energy, the NDC say they will do in energy, what the GTP, all the other political parties. Yeah. Let me begin by asking what your general assessment of the manifesto promises around energy is.
All right, thank you. So the assessment we did was based on four political parties: the NDC, the MPP, of course, and then the Movement for Change, and then the New Force. It was because at the time those were the ones that were available publicly. The assessment shows, of course, a lot of promises, a lot of commitments around various aspects of the energy and extractive sector, so oil and gas on the upstream and on the downstream, the power sector, the mining sector, and even issues around climate change and energy transition. There are a lot. One of the things we see was that if you compare the extent to which the parties went in terms of clean energy generation in 2016 and in 2020, you see a lot of focus on that aspect around renewable energy generation, around some form of waste to energy, around climate financing. There were some key commitments in that, and even around electric vehicles as well. So the current conversation around clean energy integration was featured a lot in each of the manifestos. If you compare what you see now to what you used to see in 2020 and then in 2016. Again, if you check the power sector, I think there is another conversation around diversifying our energy sources from all the parties. On the transmission sector, you realize that there were specific promises made by the NDC to improve, transmission systems, which, of course, is an important thing for us to do. But one gap that we see was, the action towards ensuring that the distribution aspect of the energy sector is really tackled. And when you look at the power sector and then the contextual issues, one of the key problems that challenges us as a country is financial sustainability within the power sector. And we're expecting that the promises would really, look at how we can retool the power sector, especially the distribution angle, to ensure that level of financial, sustainability that we expect. Because when distributor collects money, that money is supposed to trickle upwards to transmission and also to generation and even to the fuel supply. So where there are gaps in the collection, where there are excessive losses in collection and distribution, then you realize that the other aspects of the power value chain begin to also suffer. And those are the things we are seeing. So if you want to do investments in transmission, make sure that your distribution tariff collection is enough to ensure that the transmitter also gets enough money to do its investment. When these are not done, what we see is excessive, government intervention through their payments. And the point is this: you and I pay tariffs, right, to keep the lights on, to make up for generation costs, to make up for transmission costs, because every kilowatt hour of power you spend and every kilowatt hour of tariff you pay makes up for the cost of generation, the cost of transmission, the cost of distribution, fuel, even for street lighting and all other ancillary facilities that you enjoy as a consumer. So you expect certain things to work as a business, right? But when there are a lot of under recoveries, what happens is that for government to ensure that the lights are on, government will step in. When government steps in, it means that government has to now pay for what the business was supposed to pay for. And when that also happens, it means that government now suspends the monies that it could have used to, revamp other social sectors to keep the lights on. So you are enjoying the lights on, but it will be at the expense of other social sectors. And let me give you an example. In the 2023 budget, government committed about 23 billion Ghana cedis just to meet up for the inefficiencies or the power sector shortfalls. Now, if you compare that commitment to how much has been budgeted for in terms of capital expenditure in agriculture, in roads, in education, in health, in gender, you put all of those monies together, what had been budgeted for to meet the shortfalls of the energy sector was about 2 times more than capital expenditure in these sectors combined. Right. So when you begin to look at it from that angle, you realize that the power sector is sucking a lot of, funds that should have gone into other sectors from the government. So it is important to put in systems that ensure that you retool the power sector, ensure that it is efficient, so that you and I can get value for the tariffs that we are paying. And those are the hardcore decisions that we need to make. And unfortunately, you see the manifestos dancing around those issues
without really talking about how we are going to deal with it.
Exactly.
So essentially, our power sector is not looking very good. If you want to take a critical look at it, it's not looking very good.
Financially, yes.
Financially.
Very
so we're told that we're saddled with a lot of debt, right? There's a lot of debt in the power sector that needs to be cleared. And aside from the debt that needs to be cleared, there are a lot of losses also within the sector. And when the losses compare, what you're explaining, the government will have to find money from elsewhere to deal with the losses. And this is an issue that has plagued our power sector for quite some time. When you look at the manifesto of the NDC, and you look at the manifesto of the NPP, and you look at what the new force wants to do, what Alan Chamantin's great transformational plan wants to do, and all of that, does any of them have a solution to, first of all, finding a sustainable way to clear the debt within the energy sector, and also finding a way to make sure that we are dealing with the losses and we are generating enough to keep the power sector running efficiently? Do you see that in there?
There are some scattered promises around those angles, and to the best of my knowledge, we've not seen much around the approach to dealing with the energy sector debts and then the debt build-up that we continue to see. But we see one, for instance, NDC promising to really strengthen regulatory regulation within the power sector, and then we also see MPP talking about private sector participation within the retail aspect of power distribution.
Will that be the way to go? Because we've tried that before, right? It's with the retail. The retail sector.
We tried that
to
with
privatize,
the entire distribution angle with the PDS. Now, PDF would have been an important game changer for Ghana in terms of how they were going. But the challenge, again, was with the process. And that has been some of the issues for Ghana. The ideas are there, but mostly the process in getting the private sector involved becomes problematic. For instance, there's a competitive process that is ongoing. Then suddenly it is shrouded in a lot of secrecy and then opacity, right? So you get some private actors who do not have the requisite technical and then financial capacity to actually undertake the assets of ECG. doesn't become right, and eventually it is going to be problematic for you. And that is the problem we had with the PDS issue. So private sector participation is important as long as you get the right people to manage your assets. And it is not only for the power sector alone. It runs through our oil sector, downstream, upstream. Private capital and investments are relevant for the country.
So the implementation in that sense has been the problem.
Exactly.
So for the MPP side, they want to look at, streamlining that and doing it properly.
So
And
they talked
you
about,
mentioned that the NDC is also talking about strengthening regulation.
I think strengthening regulation.
Well, what is wrong
important.
with their current regulatory
Strengthening regulation
regime?
is important. I think, yes, that's one gap we needed to find out. I mean, to really be clear on what are the regulatory gaps. But of course, for every aspect of the power sector, regulation, or every aspect of industry, firm regulation is important. Firm regulation, but also ensuring that businesses are not stifled, right, through regulation. Strengthening the regulation between PLC and ECG and all other utilities is a very necessary thing to ensure that the companies do comply with what has been enshrined in the law. Another thing that runs through the parties is the issue of the cash waterfall mechanism, which everybody is talking about trying to strengthen. But one of the things that we see is that the implementation of the cash waterfall mechanism depends a lot on, one, the amount of money that you receive, as a from our tariffs or from the power sector, because it's what you receive is what you distribute. If you receive small, you distribute small. If you receive large, you distribute large. And then the other one has to do with the compliance. And for a long time, PRC's report has always indicated that ECG has not been complying with the issues around the cash waterfall mechanism. So it is not about, if you want to strengthen the importance of the cash waterfall mechanism, to ensure compliance to it. That is a very important thing for us to do.
All right. Unfortunately, we're running out of time with this conversation, but this is a conversation that we have to pick up again, and pick up from where you left off, because it's very important that we understand some of these things and that we know clearly, who is presenting us with the best solution moving forward. But Doc, I'm very grateful that he joined us in the studio this morning for us to have this conversation. Dr. Charles Gyamfi Ofori is policy lead for climate change and energy transition at ACEP. And this is where we'll be wrapping up the conversation.